How are you all today? Good? Nice, beautiful day outside today. I like it especially when there's a little bit of a breeze, because it makes it a little bit less hot. But I was having a debate with a person from Taipei on Sunday, and we were arguing about which is a better city to live in, Taipei or Taichung. And he insisted that Taipei was better. And I said, no, Taichung is better. And he's not actually even from Taipei. He's Australian, overseas Chinese from Australia. But he said, Taipei has good access to hiking. I said, well, Taichung has good access to hiking too. There's mountains everywhere. And then he said, oh, Taipei has good bike trails. I agree, Taipei does have nice bicycle trails along the river. But I said, well, Taichung has good, I go biking every weekend. So, and then I forget what else he said. I said, Taichung has much better weather than Taipei. And the climate is better. And I said, it's even hotter in Taipei than it is in Taichung. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, for sure. So anyhow, we had a big discussion. I don't know if I convinced him or not. But anyhow, I stood up for Taichung. So, yeah. Okay, good. So today I thought we would start with this article because obviously this is the big news recently, this whole conflict between Israel and Iran. And of course, the big question is, will the U.S. get involved and what will happen? So anyhow, I saw this article on the front page of today's newspaper. So it says here, U.S. faces irreparable damage if it aids Israel. Khamenei is the leader of Iran. Of course, Iran has more than one leader, but he's kind of like the spiritual leader of Iran. Iran is Islamic State, so they have their religious side, and then there's more what we call, I guess, non-religious side. They have a president, but then they have this other leader. So anyhow, this first word here I thought was very interesting. What does this come from? What's the root? What's the key central word for this? Where does it come from? Repair, right? So now, of course, it's spelled a little bit different from repair. Of course, we have the word to repair. Another word for repair is what? To fix. Yeah, to fix, okay? So to repair or to fix. So if something is irreparable, what does that mean? Cannot be repaired, right? So, if you break let's say you drop your smartphone and on the floor, or you take it to the shop and you say, hey, can you fix this? And they say, sorry, this is irreparable. Okay, it just means that we can't fix it. It's not fixable. Okay, so anyhow, they spell it slightly different. Of course, there's no I here, but this is how we spell it when we do it that way. So why don't we say this together? Why don't we say this first? Repair. Repair. And then this word, irreparable. Irreparable. Okay, so the U.S. faces irreparable damage if it aids Israel. Now, aid, of course, means to help, yeah. So if you aid, and we've talked about this word before, if you are a helper, like someone who helps somebody, how do you spell that word? Yeah, A-I-D-E, okay? So you could say he is an aide to the president. So aid, we say to aid somebody, or we received aid. Aid can be a 名词 or 动词. But aid as an E means a person, like a position, a person. Okay. So anyhow, let's go on and read this article. It says, yes? We often hear people say this house is in good repair. Yeah, is good in good repair. In good condition? Yeah, it's in good condition. I guess you could. I don't hear that expression as much. I often hear people say this house or this car is in good repair. It means it's in good condition. It's been, I think, a good way of saying, I don't hear people say it's in bad repair as much, but I guess you could say that. Another way of saying that, we could say it is well maintained. Okay? So if a house is well maintained or a car is well maintained, then it is in good repair. Okay, so those are expressions. It means it's been kept up. it's been maintained well. Okay. Yeah. Lawsuits? Oh, okay. Yeah. So you could irreparable, like you said, harm or damage or injury. It means you can't fix it. You can't come back from that. Okay. Okay, so let's read the article. It says Iranian Supreme Leader. Okay, so that's his title. It's not president. There is a president of Iran, but here it says Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei yesterday said the nation would never surrender as demanded by U.S. President Donald Trump, and warned the U.S. it would face irreparable damage if it intervenes in support of its ally Israel. Okay, so first of all, I think you all know this word. What does supreme mean? The top, the ultimate. I know there's a ping pie out there that's called Supreme. I see young people sometimes wearing this brand, but anyhow, Supreme means the top, right? Okay, so why don't we say it together? Supreme. Supreme. Now, we can use this word in other ways. Of course, here it's described as a leader. What? Supreme Court. Yeah, the 最高法院. But we could also say that this is supremely luxurious, or supreme luxury, or supreme quality, okay, or anything like that we want to say is the top, you know. Okay, so yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The power. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because I know in China they also have many different leadership titles. Technically, from what I've read, Xi Jinping is actually not technically the president. President is not there's actually other titles that according to their, of course it's very complicated because in China you have the party and you have the government. But anyhow, here we have the supreme leader and he holds the power. Okay, he's supreme leader, right? So Ayatollah is a term, okay? It's a religious title, okay, that they give to people. There used to be back about, when they had the revolution, it was about 35 years ago. They had Ayatollah Khomeini with an O. Now we have Khamenei. So anyhow, it's an interesting word. Why don't we say it together? Ayatollah. Ayatollah. And to my knowledge, this term is only used in Iran. I haven't seen this title used anywhere else. Okay, so Ayatollah Ali, and his name is Ali Khamenei. Khamenei, I don't know how you pronounce that. Yesterday said the nation would never surrender as demanded. Okay, so Donald Trump has demanded that they surrender. And then he warned that the U.S. would face irreparable damage if it intervenes. Now, you know the word intervene, right? We've talked about this many times. Intervene means if you intervene in something, what do? Yeah, you get into someone's business. You get involved, right? So a country can intervene in another country's business. You can intervene in someone's personal business, right? It's a little bit like the word interfere, right? I-N-T-E-R-F-E-R-E, interfere. If you interfere with somebody. But intervene, I will say that interfere has a slightly more negative idea behind it. If you interfere with something, it means you're blocking it. You're getting in the way. You're doing something to stop something from happening. But intervene could be a positive or negative word, right? Now, of course, Iran would think it would be very negative, 否定的, if the U.S. intervenes, right? But sometimes, let's say someone's having a problem or an issue, and you intervene to help them, okay? So you can intervene in a helpful way, right, to help somebody, or it could be negative too. So intervene can go either way, but when I think of the word interfere, I think of a more negative word, to interfere in somebody's affairs or business. Okay, so why don't we say together, intervene. Intervene. And then let's just say that word too, just to practice it. Interfere. That's an E. Interfere. Interfere. Okay. Okay, so of course the U.S. is an ally of Israel. It's a friend. It's a help. Yeah. Okay, so let's read this together. Iranian Supreme Leader. Supreme Leader. Ayatollah. Ali Khamenei. Yesterday said the nation would never surrender. Surrender. As demanded by U.S. President Donald Trump. And warned the U.S. it would face irreparable damage if it intervenes in support of, let's say it again, intervenes in support of its ally Israel. Okay, now I think you know this, but I'm just going to remind you. Surrender, you know what surrender means, right? To give up, right? To say, okay, I surrender, I give up, I'll give in, I'll give up. Okay, so we say to surrender. Okay, it says here the speech came 6 days into the conflict with Trump demanding Iran's unconditional surrender, while boasting that the U.S. could kill Khamenei, fueling speculation about a possible intervention. Okay, so let's take this, look at this. Okay, so of course a conflict is, there's many kinds of conflicts. We often have conflicts with other people, but we can also have conflicts between two countries, okay? So with Trump demanding Iran's unconditional surrender. Now, this term unconditional surrender is an actual way of a form of surrender, right? If you surrender with conditions, what does that mean? It means, well, I have all kinds of 条件, right? I might say, well, I'll surrender, but you need to do this, and I want this, and you have to give me this, and I won't do this, okay? But if it's unconditional surrender, it just means I surrender with no conditions, okay? This term I see most commonly is like during World War II, 二次大战, Japan and Germany surrendered unconditionally, right? There was no conditions, okay? Mm-hmm. 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 Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
Which surprised
Churchill.
Because unconditional surrender means you have to fight it in the end.
Right.
There's no room to maneuver.
Right. No negotiation.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's very strong.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, with World War II, I can understand why they wanted unconditional surrender, right? You don't want a surrender, and maybe, let's say, for example, if Germany says, okay, I surrender, but the Nazi party still exists, right? Or Japan says, I surrender, but I'm going to do this, or I want this, right? So it's very interesting because if you read the history of Japan, for example, when they surrendered, there was a big debate as to whether or not the emperor could remain in his position, right? And interesting enough, Douglas MacArthur, said the emperor should stay in his position because the Japanese hold him in very high regard, right? He's like almost like a god to them, right? So it was very interesting, this debate between without the emperor. Yeah. So a lot of people forget, it's very interesting, a lot of people forget that even today, Japan's constitution, 宪法, was written by the United States. It was, so it's a very interesting story. Okay, so why don't we say it together? Unconditional. Unconditional. Now, with this word unconditional, I have to say, it doesn't have to be with surrender, right? Another way that we use this word a lot is unconditional love, right? We often say that parents will give their children unconditional love. Well, we hope so, right? Because if a parent says, well, I'll love you if you obey everything I tell you, right? I love you if you get good grades in school or you go to a good university. That would not be unconditional love. But if a parent says, well, I love you no matter what, right? No matter what you do, whoever, whatever, I still will love you. That would be unconditional love. Okay. So why don't we say it one more time? Unconditional surrender. Okay. Now it says here Donald Trump was boasting. Okay, what does to boast mean? To brag. Yeah, I mean, we often use the word brag, boast, B-R-A-G. Brag, yeah, I guess we could say they're almost the same. They're exactly the same. To brag or boast is to, how do you say it in Chinese? To, to say, oh, I can do this, I can do that, okay? Yeah, so why don't we say together, boast. Boast. Brag. Brag. Okay, now I will say boast can be a 动词 or a 名词, right? You can say he boasted or he made a big boast about something. But brag can only be a 动词. You can only brag about something. You don't say I made a brag about something. It's not a noun, okay? So he boasted that the U.S. could kill Khomeini, fueling speculation. Now we've talked about these words before. To speculate means what? To guess, right? I speculate that, maybe tomorrow it will rain, right? I guess that maybe tomorrow it will rain. It means to, now, of course, there's another kind of speculation. Speculation is the noun version, but we can also speculate in the stock market, right? 股市, right? If we, it's almost like to bet money, to put money on something and say, well, I guess, I hope, I think that maybe the stock market will go up. So we often say stock market speculation. It's like investments, but it's almost like 赌博, right? It's a little bit like that. So why don't we say it together? To speculate with an E. Speculate. To speculate. Speculate. And then this word, speculation. 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 Now, this is a good word. Fuel means what? Fuel is, fuel. Yeah, something that keeps something going like fire. So to drive your motorcycle or your car, you need fuel, right? Which is usually gasoline, although now there's more and more electric scooters. But anyhow, to fuel something as a 动词 means to give power to give energy to. It's like to take that word and turn it into a noun. So to fuel speculation means it's creating speculation. It's generating. So I think a good word for fueling would be simply the word to generate. Okay, because what do we generate? We generate electricity, right? We generate power. We generate many things. So we can say to generate speculation, generating speculation, fueling speculation, anything that gives power to something, okay? So once again, let's say it again, fueling, fueling, generate, generating. Okay, so generating or fueling speculation about a possible intervention. Now, we just talked about the word to intervene, right? So here, this becomes the 名词, the noun version. So why don't we say that together? Intervention. Intervention. Okay, so let's read this together. The speech came 6 days into the conflict. Conflict. With Trump demanding Iran's unconditional surrender. Let's say it one more time. Unconditional surrender. While boasting that the U.S. could kill Khomeini, fueling speculation about a possible intervention. Intervention. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Did Joe Biden did anything worthwhile to prevent Iran from developing the nuclear weapons?
That's a big debate. I think that a lot of people feel like nobody was really doing it. There were sanctions, right, against Iran for developing its nuclear program or nuclear uranium enrichment, right? But I think most people would argue that those were not very effective. You know, there was not really much effect from that. Obviously, Iran is still doing what they want to do. You know, and so I think it's always debatable. I mean, you remember there was a agreement with Iran during the first Trump administration, but then Trump didn't feel like that agreement was doing anything, so he dumped it. And then under Biden, I mean, there were still sanctions, but you know, a lot of people say sanctions were not very effective. But yeah, I will say this: Israel's been very clear about this for a very long time. Israel said Iran will not have nuclear weapons, period, right? And so they would say they will do anything it takes to ensure that Iran does not have nuclear weapons. So I think we're seeing the result of that. And you know, the United Nations just announced just before this conflict, they said Iran has not been abiding by this agreement, right? So anyhow, I think we're seeing the result of this, right? Of this very long process, yeah. I don't know who provided originally. I mean, mm-hmm. You're saying Iran or Iraq? Yeah. Right. 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 Yeah, I don't know either where they got their. I mean, it could come from Russia, it could come from China, it could come from anywhere. But it's interesting because Israel over the years has interfered with Iran's program in various ways. I don't know if, I mean, you probably remember in the news, they years ago they launched a bingdu, a virus that attacked all the equipment to refine that, and it destroyed it using a online a virus. And then they assassinated some of the nuclear scientists that were working on this program. So Israel's tried various ways to also stop this. Yeah, Mossad. I mean, those guys are pretty. They're pretty. They're pretty smart. I mean, I don't know. They do things that nobody else does. So yeah. So anyhow, here it says the long-range blitz began on Friday when Israel launched a massive bombing campaign that prompted Iran to respond with missiles and drones. Okay, now this word blitz is a very interesting word. I think probably the first time we ever saw this word used was during World War II. Yeah. So there was a word that came into popularity during World War II because of the Germans. And blitz in German, the one, means lightning. You know what lightning is, right? Yeah. Light, don't forget there's an N. Lightning, okay? So blitzkrieg means, and Krieg means what in German? Krieg means war, okay? Or yeah. So I think it means, yeah, Krieg. Poland and France and yeah. Yeah. So blitzkrieg means lightning war. Okay. So during World War II in 1939, when Germany invaded Poland and then they kept going, they called it blitzkrieg because it was very, very fast, right? They moved very quickly. They used tanks and airplanes, and it was a new style of warfare. And so they called it blitzkrieg. Okay. So if you read World War II, you'll hear about this a lot. But since then, when we say blitz, it means to do something very fast. Now, of course, this means here an attack, right? But you could use this word in almost any way, right? You could say, a shopping blitz, right? If someone goes into the supermarket and just starts buying things very quickly, right? Or anything that you do very fast, you could probably use this word to express that idea of someone doing something very fast, very quickly, okay? So why don't we say it together, blitz. Blitz. Okay, so it says here the long-range blitz. Now, of course, this is long-range because Iran, the distance between Iran and Israel, they're not right next to each other. So they had to attack long-range. We could say short-range, but this is not short-range. This is long-range. So the long-range blitz began on Friday when Israel launched a massive, okay, what's another word for massive? Huge, big, gigantic, okay? Enormous, okay? So, there's many great words here. Let me write a couple of these down. I know you know most of these, but we could say enormous, gigantic, huge, of course. Yeah, you could say that. Let me see. Humongous is more of a, it's more of a casual word. Yeah, it's a funny word. I mean, it's a kind of word that kids would use more, but I guess anyone could use it. Humongous just means enormous, big. Okay, so why don't we say these words together? Huge. Huge. Enormous. Enormous. Gigantic. Gigantic. Humongous. Humongous. And then finally this word, massive. Massive. Right, they're all words that express something that's very large, very big. Okay, so it says here a massive bombing campaign. Okay, remember we talked about election campaigns and shopping campaigns and marketing campaigns, and now it's a bombing campaign, right? It's an action, something you do. Okay, that prompted, okay, and what's another word for prompt? Caused, right, to cause something. You can say the rain prompted me to stay at home, right? The rain caused me to stay at home. Okay, so why don't we say together, prompted. Prompted. Okay, it's very interesting. I'll share another idea of this word. If you ever go and watch a play, a performance, right, like a theatrical play, like if you go to the 国家歌剧院, right, and there's a play, often with plays, there's somebody who's hidden in the front. They have a little hole below the stage, and the actors and actresses can see that person, and they call that person a prompter. Because sometimes the actor is talking and they forget their lines, right? And they're like, and that person down there will actually tell them, this is what you're supposed to say. Now, the audience can't see that person, but there's have you heard of this? It's kind of interesting. Often, and there's like a little hole or box down there that you can't see from the audience, but it's covered, and that person will sit there and they can prompt the person what to say. Now, I've seen children's performances before, where they have 小朋友, and they're singing, and often the teacher will prompt them, right? She'll tell them what words to say. So this is a word we can say, a prompter, or someone who prompts. Now, of course, today when many politicians give a 演讲, right, a speech, they have a special screen in front of them that you cannot see. It's almost like invisible. It's like 透明的. And it has the words for their speech, and we call that a teleprompter, T-E-L-E. It's one word, teleprompter with an E-R, okay? So, like last year, or the year, Joe Biden had a really big problem whenever there was no teleprompter, okay? So when he couldn't read his teleprompter, 谁知道 what he was going to say, right? He could say anything, right? Or he could just start talking about who knows what. So people said Joe Biden could not give a speech without his teleprompter. Now, I'm sure Joe Biden's not the only person. I'm sure there's many other politicians that they really, really need their teleprompter. Okay. So anyhow, this word can be used in that way. Okay. So let's go on and let's go back and read this. It says the long-range blitz. Blitz began on Friday when Israel launched a massive bombing campaign. that prompted Iran to respond with missiles and drones. Okay. I just want to remark on something. I think the proper way to say it is Iran, but I notice that many Americans will say Iran. So I think, I think Iran is probably closer to the proper way, but sometimes you hear Americans saying Iran or Iraq, Iraq, yeah. Anyhow, that's Iran. That's Irene. Yeah, but yeah. I don't think so. I know Indians have a connection to Aryan people. The Indian race is known as an Aryan race. There's a connection, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, Iranians are Persians, right? Yeah. So let me just type that here. When you talk about Iran, we talk about Persia. So Persia is a very historical country, right? It's very old, ancient, and it's a very interesting place. And they're not Arabs, right? It's funny because I think sometimes Westerners, they get Persians or Iranians mixed up with Arabs, but because they're both Muslim, Islamic countries. But Persia is a different, they're different. Okay, so we often say Persian with an N, okay? I remember in Taichung for a while, there was actually a Persian restaurant. Yeah, it was really cool. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to eat there. And then they closed. So, but in Taipei, there's Persian restaurants. And I have eaten at the Persian restaurants in Taipei. And they're pretty good. Okay. So anyhow, Persia. Why don't we say together, Persia? Persia. Okay. Okay. I was watching TV last night, and they were talking about how it's very interesting because historically, Israel and Iran or Persia actually have had a friendly relationship in the past, right? Before the revolution, I didn't know this actually, but they were saying when Israel became a nation in 1948, they said one of the first countries to officially recognize Israel was Iran. Yeah. So it was very interesting, and Iran and Israel, I think, had a lot of cooperation during the Cold War. I know U.S. and Iran were very close allies during World War II. After World War II. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Right. Mm-hmm. Iraq. Yeah. Because they had a nuclear reactor. Yeah. Yeah. Right. 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 And bombed Iraq, not Iran, Iraq. Yeah. So anyhow, Israel's very good at attacking. Whenever they see a threat, they don't wait. They just go for it. Okay. So it says here, the nation will never surrender, Khomeini said in a speech read on state television, in which he called Trump's ultimatum unacceptable. Now, this is a very good word, and I don't think we've ever talked about this. What is an ultimatum? Yeah, it's like a final warning. Okay? It's like a last warning. So, and it doesn't have to be a country. Your parents maybe have given you ultimatums, right? So let's say your parents said you had to be home by 9 o'clock when you were in high school, and you came home at 10 o'clock. And your parents say, okay, I'm going to give you one more chance. I'm going to give you, don't do it again, but then next week you come home at 9:30, right? And finally your parents say, okay, Swanda, I'm giving you an ultimatum. If you come home late one more time, you cannot go out at all, okay? So an ultimatum is like a final demand or a final warning, right? And often countries will give an ultimatum, but your parents can give an ultimatum. So why don't we say together, ultimatum. Ultimatum. So of course Trump kind of said you should surrender unconditionally, you know. And of course people are like, well, surrender unconditionally or else, right? Or else what? You know, what's going to happen? Okay, so that's the idea. Is it an ultimatum? Yes. Mm-hmm. We call it a curfew. Yeah. Well, no, we just call it I don't think there's any specific name, but I think your parents often give a curfew. Yeah, there's a curfew. You have to be home by a certain time. CURFEW. I think we've talked about. We don't necessarily call it a home curfew, but sorry, that's a U. CURFEW, a curfew, right? Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, obviously, sometimes the government has curfews. Like, I read that in Los Angeles, LA recently, some places had curfews, right? People had to be off the streets and out at home by a certain time. Why don't we say together, curfew? Curfew. Okay. So let's read this. The nation will never surrender. Khomeini said in a speech read on state television, in which he called Trump's ultimatum unacceptable. Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh. Okay. I've never heard that before. Okay. Yeah, it almost sounds like the English word, so yeah. Okay. So it says here, America should know that any military intervention will undoubtedly result in irreparable damage, he said. Okay. Now, there's some good words here. Undoubtedly, of course, means we could also say what? Without doubt. Okay. Or beyond doubt. Okay. This will beyond doubt do something, or this will without doubt will do something, or we can simply say undoubtedly. Okay. Means it's for sure. It's a, 100%. It's for sure. Okay, so why don't we say together, undoubtedly. Undoubtedly. Now, I don't think I need to tell you, but just remember, we do not pronounce the B, right? There's no B pronounced there. So one more time, undoubtedly. Okay, will result in irreparable damage. Okay, so there's that word again. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why does Donald Trump have to act so strong?
Because I think he wants Iran's government to be over too. I think he wants Khomeini out of there. So I honestly, if I was Donald Trump, I would say this is my opportunity to change the government in Iran, because this, obviously Iran has sponsored terrorism and Hamas and Hezbollah and all kinds of things, across the Middle East for a very long time. And I'll be honest with you, I'm almost 100% sure right now countries like Saudi Arabia and Jordan, I'm sure they're not going to say it, but I'm sure they're very happy that Israel is bombing Iran right now, because they really do not like Iran. And they don't want Iran to have nuclear weapons either, right? There's no way that Saudi Arabia and all these other countries want Iran to have nuclear weapons. So I'm sure they're like, jayo, when Israel is bombing. So I think Donald Trump thinks this is an opportunity right now, because Iran is really in bad shape, to get rid of their government, right? And it was what's fascinating to me was I was watching the TV was that inside Iran there are a lot of people Iranians who also would love to see the end of this Islamic Republic, the Khomeini and the Ayatollahs. They want I'm not saying all of them, but many of them want Iran to go back to the way it was before 1979. Yeah. And I saw a video that was very interesting, was a group of Iranians was holding the old flag of Iran, and they were covering their faces so you couldn't see their faces, but they were standing there holding the old flag, and they were singing, I think, the national anthem of the old Iranian Republic. I don't know what it was called. And of course, the old Shah of Iran, the previous, his brother, or no, his son or something, his son is saying he wants to come back and become, he says Iran should, change. They should be, so this is very interesting because, if Iran, who knows, but if Iran were to, something were to change, you could see a complete different government there, a complete different direction for Iran. So anyhow, I know many young people in Iran do not like this government. Yeah. Well, it's corruption and oppression and yeah. So I think if there was a new Shah, he would have to be very careful about having a democratic government, right? Because his father was kicked out because of all the, they had secret police and all kinds of stuff, bad stuff going on before. Okay, so anyhow, let's read this. America should know that any military intervention, let's say it again, military intervention will undoubtedly result in, let's say it again, will undoubtedly result in, oops, okay, so we have our technical issues, yeah. No problem. I was reading that right now China and Russia are kind of worried about the whole Iranian situation because remember that Iran and China and Russia are kind of like allies, right? And so people are like, what's going to happen if, the Iranian government changes? Exactly, yeah. Who knows? But so anyhow, let's go on. It says, will undoubtedly result in, let's say it again, in irreparable damage. One more time, in irreparable damage. He said. Okay. So it says here, Khomeini in power since 1989 and the final arbiter of all matters of state in Iran had earlier vowed the country would show no mercy toward Israel's leaders. Okay, now there's one word here I want to mention. What is an arbiter? Yeah, someone who decides when you have a disagreement or you have an issue or kind of like the final judge, the final decider, whoever makes the decision, right, is an arbiter, okay? So it's more of a legal term. It's not a word we use every day, but it's a word that we do use sometimes. So why don't we say together, arbiter. Arbiter. Okay. I think you can say arbitrator, yeah. So arbitrator or arbiter, I think arbitrator is arbitrator, yeah, okay. So arbitrator of all matters of state. Now when we say matters of state, we talk about the government, right? All government matters, okay? All matters of state in Iran. So he had earlier vowed, okay, and what's another word for vow? To swear. What else? To promise, to pledge, P-L-E-D-G-E, right? To pledge, to swear, to promise, to vow, okay? That he vowed the country would show no mercy towards Israel's leaders. Okay, so he has very hardline attitude. Okay, so let's read this. Khomeini in power since 1989. And the final arbiter of all matters of state in Iran had earlier vowed the country would show no mercy toward Israel's leaders. One more time, toward Israel's leaders. Okay. So it says here, the speech followed a night of strikes with Israeli attacks destroying 2 buildings, making centrifuge components for Iran's nuclear program near Tehran, the International Atomic Energy Agency said. Okay, so when we say a strike, of course, we don't mean like, what is that, ba gong, right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about an attack, and a military attack. Okay, so a night of strikes. Okay, these are Israeli strikes, with Israeli attacks destroying 2 buildings, making centrifuges. Now, a centrifuge is, is something most people don't know, but it's a machine for refining, uranium. I mean, you can use it for, there are other kinds of centrifuges, right? If you ever work in chemistry or science, but it's often used, one use of it is to refine. Now, this word refine is a very good word. You know what to refine means? To make more fine, right? So if you take something that's very rough or unrefined, we could say unrefined, right? So this can become a 形容词, right? And we could say unrefined, okay? So if something is very unrefined or not refined, and then we refine it, means we make it more pure, more fine, or more. I'll give you a great example. I still remember when I was a kid, and I was in Hualien, and we went to the Taitang sugar factory, and in near Taidong somewhere. It was somewhere between Taidong and Hualien. And I remember they showed all this brown sugar, you know, and this brown sugar was pouring out, right? And I remember they actually let us put our hand out and try some. But that brown sugar is very unrefined, right? And then, of course, from that, you can keep refining it, and then it becomes very fine, white sugar, or even like powdered sugar, right? So it's very, very fine. So, but we can also use refined and unrefined to describe a person, right? If someone is very unrefined, what does that mean usually? Uneducated, or they don't act in a very classy way. You know, sometimes I can think of other words, like we might say someone is very crass, or crass is an interesting word. It means they're very impolite, they're very rude. Yeah, rude is maybe a good word, crass or rude. Okay, rude. So someone like that we might say is very unrefined. Someone who has bad manners. Okay? They have bad manners, we might say that person is very unrefined. Okay? Now, of course, if someone is very refined, that means their manners, their way of speaking, the way they act is very high class, right? It's very polite. It's very, classy. Yeah. So anyhow, this is a good word. So why don't we say together, refine. Refine. Unrefined. Unrefined. Let's say these words too. Crass. Crass. Rude. Rude. Now, if you go to a factory like a gongchang, we call it a refinery with an R-Y, refinery. Now, the most common refinery is an oil refinery, right? Because when you get, like 石油, right, out of the ground, you have to refine it to make other products like gasoline, right? So you have to refine. So we talk about an oil refinery. But here we have a centrifuge is used to refine this uranium. How do you say it in Chinese? Yo. Okay. So why don't we say together uranium? Uranium. Okay. So yeah, uranium is of course, very much controlled, because you can't just ship it everywhere, right? Okay. So anyhow, let's say this word. Now this word is this G is more of a zh sound. Okay. So it's centrifuge. Centrifuge. Right, and a centrifuge usually spins around and around and around, and it refines something. Okay, so these two buildings are making centrifuge components. What's a simple word for component? Part. You know, like 零件, right? Component. When you buy anything like a smartphone or a car or anything, it has many, many components. So why don't we say together, components? Components. Now, a component doesn't actually have to be a physical part. Like you could say his plan, his, 计划, his plan has many different components. There are many components to his plan. Okay, it means there's many different parts to his plan. Okay, so then all of this centrifuge is for Iran's nuclear program. And of course, their 首都 is Tehran. Okay? Okay, so let's read this together. The speech followed a night of strikes. Strikes. With Israeli attacks. Destroying two buildings. Making centrifuge components. One more time, centrifuge components for Iran's nuclear program. Again, nuclear program near Tehran. The International Atomic Energy Agency said. Okay, one more time. International Atomic Energy Agency. Okay, you know what an atom is, right? Yeah. How do you say an atom in Chinese? Yeah, it's very small. Okay, so when anything to do with atoms, we say atomic, right? So, like the the atomic, we often say atomic bomb, right? Like the U.S. dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima, so we call it atomic. Of course, we could say a nuclear bomb, but we often say atomic bomb also. Okay, so I'll read this. It says, more than 50 Israeli Air Force fighter jets carried out a series of airstrikes in the Tehran area over the past few hours, the Israeli military said, adding that several weapons manufacturing facilities were hit. As part of the broad effort to disrupt Iran's nuclear weapons development program, a centrifuge production facility in Tehran was targeted. Now, whenever we say facility, of course, this is a very broad word. This could be like a factory. It could be any kind of, there's many different kinds of facilities. Even like a hospital is a facility, right? It's a medical facility. So there's industrial facilities, there's military facilities, there's medical facilities. It's just a place. Okay, so why don't we say together, facility. Facility. Okay, so here, this is a long statement. It's here. It says, of course, these fighter jets, which is like a 战斗机, right? It carried out a series of airstrikes. It means air attacks in the Tehran area. Okay, and this is part of a broad, okay, we could say a wide effort, a big effort, a broad effort, okay? Broad means very wide, right? To disrupt, okay? So remember, when we see the word disrupt, it's very similar to the word interrupt, right? To disrupt or interrupt. Now, we talked about this before. If you disrupt something, it means you make trouble, you stop it, you make trouble for it, right? So, often we say in a classroom, teachers do not like disruptive students, right? If we add an IVE, right? If you say that student is being very disruptive, usually they're making lots of noise, or they're running around, or they're causing trouble, and so we say don't be disruptive, okay? So why don't we say it together, to disrupt. To disrupt. And then if we add an IVE to turn it into a 形容词, disruptive. Disruptive. Okay, so let's read this whole paragraph here. It says, more than 50 Israeli Air Force fighter jets Okay, let's say again, Israeli Air Force fighter jets carried out a series of airstrikes in the Tehran area over the past few hours. The Israeli military said, adding that several weapons manufacturing facilities, one more time, manufacturing facilities were hit as part of the broad effort to disrupt Iran's nuclear weapons development program, a centrifuge production facility in Tehran was targeted. Okay. So here's that word we just talked about, uranium, right? So it says centrifuges are vital for uranium enrichment, the sensitive process that can produce fuel for reactors, or in highly extended form, the core of a nuclear warhead. Okay, so here's another word. We just talked about refine, to refine, refinery, refining, okay? But here's another word, enrich or enrichment, okay? What does to enrich mean? Yeah, to make it more, well, make it more rich, right? But to make it more positive, right? So how do we enrich our knowledge? By reading, right? By coming to Doug's class, right? Okay, so yeah, to enrich your knowledge, right? Now, we could talk about cultural enrichment, right? To improve or to boost your cultural understanding, 文化, or it could be education, or it could be anything that you make, richer, okay? I'll tell you, often when we eat food, like when we buy food that's in the supermarket, often it is enriched with vitamins and minerals, right? They add vitamins and minerals to the food to make it more healthy. So like if you buy like 麦片, like cereal, often it will say enriched with vitamins, right? It means it has some things added to it to make it richer or to make it more healthy, okay? So why don't we say together, to enrich, to enrich, enrichment, enrichment. Now, of course, this is here a very different enrichment, right? It says centrifuges are vital. Vital, what's another word for vital? Important or key or, crucial, right? For uranium enrichment. The sensitive process that can produce fuel, okay, here's that word fuel, for reactors. What's a reactor? Does everybody know? Yeah. Taiwan just closed its last reactor, right? Nuclear reactor in Hengchun or Kending or Hengchun, I think, right? They closed it, right? They ended it. Okay, so why don't we say together, reactors. Reactors. Now, usually we say nuclear reactor, right? It's a nuclear reactor. That's the word. And this is a very specific word we usually just use for nuclear energy. So fuel for reactors, or in highly extended form, okay, it means in a very, when the enrichment goes even further, it can create fuel for the core of a nuclear warhead. Now, you know what a warhead is, right? It's like, how do you say a warhead? It's, yeah, 弹头, that's exactly it. Yeah, 弹头. Okay, so a nuclear warhead. Now, what's core mean? The center, the main part, the hub, right? Often we talk about the core of the earth, right? Or the core of an apple, right? 苹果, right? When you eat an apple, usually we throw away the core, right? Because it has seeds in it. It's kind of hard, right? So I still remember my father would just eat the whole apple. He would eat the core and add the seeds and everything. I was like, wow, how do you do that? But I guess so. So now sometimes I try to eat the core too, but it's not very good. So usually I 丢掉, right? Okay. But anyhow, why don't we say together core? Core. Okay. Okay, so let's read this. Centrifuges are vital for uranium enrichment. Okay, let's say it again. Uranium enrichment. The sensitive process that can produce fuel for reactors, or in highly extended form, the core of a nuclear warhead. Nuclear warhead. Right. Okay. Okay. I don't think we have to read the rest of this, but well, let's see. Maybe there's something interesting here. Okay. Okay, so here it says the Iranians said they launched a hypersonic missile at Tel Aviv. You know, Tel Aviv is the capital of Israel. Although Jerusalem, I don't know, it's kind of complicated, but anyhow. So let's just read this one or two more paragraphs at the end here. They're talking about hypersonic missiles. Now, this is a very interesting word that we hear a lot more and more these days. We've talked about, well, let me just read this. It says hypersonic missiles travel at more than 5 times the speed of sound and can maneuver, mid-flight, making them harder to track and intercept. Okay, so we often talk about supersonic, right? What does supersonic mean? Yeah, so what does hypersonic mean? Yeah, super, right? So I'll give you a very simple example. We talk about 超级市场, right? Supermarkets, right? But I still remember when the first time when 家乐福 opened, many people said, oh, that's a hypermarket. Okay. Not a supermarket because it's bigger than most supermarkets. It has everything. So some people actually call that a hypermart or a hypermarket because it's really big. Okay. So hypersonic. Now when we say the word sonic, S-O-N-I-C, what does that refer to? Sound. Okay. So whenever you say sonic, okay, and that is a word, sonic, okay, it refers to sound. So I'll give you an example. I can't think of any other good examples. When I used to live in Hualien as a child, sometimes the Taiwan Kongjun, the airplanes would break the sound barrier over Hualien, which means they would fly at fast, they would fly at supersonic speeds. And I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but when they do, there's something we call a sonic boom. Okay? And so I still remember we'd be sitting in our house and suddenly the whole house would go boom, and the windows would shake, and it's because an airplane was flying at supersonic speed over the city. Okay? Now, I don't think they allow that anymore. I don't think they can do that. I think the government says, okay, you cannot fly over the city at supersonic speed because if you do, it might break the windows or might scare people. But it's called a sonic boom, B-O-O-M. So it makes a booming sound. It sounds like that. So I haven't heard that many years, but I remember when I was a child in Hualien, you would hear this all the time. I guess back then it was more free. The Air Force could do whatever they wanted to. Okay, so why don't we say together, hypersonic. Hypersonic. Okay, they travel at more than 5 times the speed of sound, okay? We call it the speed of sound, okay? And can maneuver. What does maneuver mean? To move, right? So let's say you're walking down the street and suddenly there's a big crowd of people. And, well, actually, I'll give you a better example. you're walking down the sidewalk in Taichung, and suddenly there's all these motorcycles parked on the sidewalk in front of you, right? So what do you have to do? You have to maneuver around the motorcycles, okay? Because they're in your way, right? So maybe you have to go left, then you have to go right, then you have to go left. So we have to maneuver around the motorcycles. Okay, so why don't we say together, maneuver. Maneuver. Okay, so these missiles can maneuver mid-flight. Means that in the middle of their flight, they can actually move. Okay, some missiles can only go straight, but these missiles can actually maneuver. They can move, making them harder to track and intercept. Okay, now intercept means to stop, to hit, right? Okay, to track means to follow, right? If you track something, you follow it. Okay. Long time ago I know in America, and I'm sure many other places, people would, even today, people will track animals. Hunters will track animals, right? So if you're hunting a deer, sometimes you can track it. You can follow their footsteps. You can see where they're going, and you can track them. Okay, so it means to follow them. Okay, so let's read this. Hypersonic missiles travel at more than 5 times the speed of sound and can maneuver mid-flight, making them harder to track and intercept. Okay. So I will say intercept, sometimes we use this word in other ways. For example, let's say your boss is leaving the office. They're walking out the door, and you say, I intercepted him on his way out the door. It means while he was walking out the door, I met him. I stopped him. Okay? Because maybe you want to say something to him, or you need to talk to him. So you say, I intercepted him as he was walking out the door. Okay, so we can use that word in many different ways, to intercept. Okay? Okay, so I think that's all we'll go to a different article now, but do you have any questions about this article before? Yeah.
Well, I have maybe different aspects.
Yeah.
In terms of balance of error,
Mm-hmm.
like in Cold War.
Cold War, yeah. Yeah.
Soviet Union and the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
They both have nuclear weapons.
A lot of nuclear weapons. Right.
So they utilize each other.
Right.
Which keep the balance of terror.
Right.
And it makes the world peaceful.
Yeah.
And afterwards, China and the Soviet Union,
Right.
they both have nuclear weapons.
Right. And China is building more.
Now they are building more.
Yeah.
So like India and Pakistan in the subcontinent.
Right.
Yeah, they both have nuclear weapons.
Right.
And they utilize each other. So
Right.
it's more secure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why not only Israel has nuclear weapons in Middle East?
I think it's called non-proliferation, which means that there is an effort by the world, or many of the world powers, to prevent nuclear weapons from proliferating. And I don't know if you know the word proliferation. Proliferation means the spread, right? So if we say this is actually a word we've never learned before, to proliferate. Okay, or we could say proliferation. Okay, so the idea is we call it non-proliferation. Okay, yeah, there's a non-proliferation treaty. To proliferate is another word for to spread. Okay, anything that spreads or increases, we call that to proliferate. Now, many things could proliferate. Pollution, 空气污染, or garbage, or animals, people can proliferate, right? They spread, okay? So to proliferate. So right now, for many decades, the global policy has been non-proliferation of nuclear weapons, which means that if at all possible, we don't want nuclear weapons to keep spreading, right? And Israel is very interesting because they actually kind of violated that. I mean, they got nuclear weapons on their own. It wasn't like anyone said, okay, we're going to, their program to develop nuclear weapons was a secret program, and they got uranium, and they did it themselves, of course. So I think that, yeah, there is some argument for balancing nuclear power, but I think the whole policy in general is let's stop nuclear weapons from increasing, regardless. So, if possible, we don't want any new countries, anybody, to have nuclear weapons. In fact, Taiwan ran into that, right? In the 1970s, Taiwan was developing nuclear weapons, and the U.S. found out about it, the CIA found out about it, and they put a stop to it, right? It's actually, if you have the uranium and you have some of the technology, it's not that difficult to get nuclear weapons. I mean, you can do it. Advanced countries like Taiwan could do it. And Japan could do it very easily if they wanted to. But I think the policy is let's have non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. Let's not encourage other countries to get this. So anyhow, it's a very, and I think the problem with Iran is committed, or I should say the current Iran, not the current government in Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran. They have said very clearly that they are committed to wiping out Israel. This is actually a policy. They want to wipe out Israel. They want to get rid of Israel. And so when you have a country that says, we want to get nuclear weapons and we want to wipe out Israel, I think Israel, that's why Israel's attacking Iran. They say, we're not going to go there. Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, right? So I think it's an issue. But let's look at this word, because this is a good word. We've never learned this before. To proliferate. To proliferate. Okay, and then as a means of proliferation. Proliferation. Non-proliferation. Non-proliferation. Okay, it's not a word we use every day, but proliferate's a good word. I mean, we do use it. It means to spread, okay? Okay, so anyhow, lots of interesting things to think about. And we'll see what happens in the next few days or few weeks, yeah. So it says here, this is a news story, completely different subject. It says, Taiwanese entrepreneurs in China feeling the heat. Okay, now this is a word we have not talked about, but it's a great word, and it's especially for Taiwan. We see this word all the time. What is an entrepreneur? But what it's usually like a startup. We often say like someone who starts their own business. And so there's a word that we often use. We say a startup. Now, sometimes I see this with a hyphen, and sometimes I see this with one word, a startup. Sometimes we say a startup company, or we simply say a startup. We don't even have to say company. We say he has his own startup as a 名词, or startup can be a 形容词. But an entrepreneur is basically a business owner who starts their own business. So basically, the reason why this is so good is because Taiwan has many millions of entrepreneurs, right? Okay, so I often remind my 外国朋友 when they move to Taiwan or they want to understand Taiwan, I always say the backbone. You know the word backbone? Backbone is your spine, right? I say the backbone of Taiwan's economy is small, medium-sized enterprises, right? 中小企业, right? We say SME, right? So those 中小企业 were, I think, mostly started by entrepreneurs, okay? So Taiwan has a really entrepreneurial, so if we want to turn this into a 形容词, we take the R-I-A-L, entrepreneurial, okay? Okay, so first of all, let's say this word, entrepreneur. It's a hard word to say. Entrepreneur. One more time. Entrepreneur. Okay, let's turn it into a 形容词 with an R-I-A-L. Entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurial. Right. So we could say Taiwan has a very entrepreneurial culture. Okay. The culture promotes and we can also say entrepreneurship. Okay. S-H-I-P. It means the idea of promoting of entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurship with a R-S-H-I-P. It becomes a 名词, like an entrepreneurship. It means like an idea of entrepreneur. So anyhow, we say Taiwan is a very entrepreneurial country or has an entrepreneurial culture. People like to start their own businesses. They like to run their own companies. Okay, so it says here, Taiwanese entrepreneurs in China feeling the heat. Now, if you say feeling the heat, you're like, oh, is it like 35度 today? What does that mean? Well, but it means to face pressure, 压力. Okay? So if you say right now I'm really feeling the heat, you're probably not talking about the weather, the 温度 outside. You're talking about you are under pressure. You are feeling some pressure from something or someone. Okay? So I'll give you an example. You talk to your friend and you say, how are you doing this week? And you say, I'm really tired because I'm feeling the heat from my boss. I need to finish this project, right? It means my boss, my 老板, is giving me lots of 压力, some pressure, so I'm feeling the heat. It means I'm under pressure, okay? So this is a very good expression. Why don't we say together, feeling the heat. Feeling the heat. Okay, so Taiwanese entrepreneurs in China feeling the heat. So they're under pressure. Okay, so let's read this. It says, bustling Taipei style shopping streets, majestic temples to Taiwan's deities, and thriving factories dot the eastern Chinese city of Kunshan, for years a hub for Taiwanese businesses. But now the firms are feeling the strain from cross-strait tensions that have stoked safety fears. There's a lot of good words here. Okay, a lot of good new words here. I like this. Okay, so first of all, what does bustling mean? Very busy. I think in Taiwan we like to say 很热闹, right? Okay, but bustling means busy. Like we say Taiwan city streets are bustling with cars and motorcycles, okay, and people. They're bustling. They're very busy, okay? So why don't we say together, bustling. Bustling. Yeah. Usually when I think of bustling, it has more of a positive feeling to it, right? It's not negative. If I say, oh, the city is bustling, people don't say, oh, that's terrible, that's bad. No, it's good. Now, if I say the city is overcrowded or it's too busy or it's traffic jams, but when I say bustling, it has kind of a lively feeling to it, a positive feeling to it. Okay, so one more time, bustling. Bustling. Okay, so bustling Taipei style shopping streets, majestic temples. What does majestic mean? What? Actually, solemn. How do you say this? Yeah, grand. That would be a good word. Grand. Yeah, grand, like the Grand Hotel in Taipei. Okay, so grand, majestic. When you think of majesty, you think of like a god or a king or something like that. It's grand, it's amazing. So yeah, I think grand is probably a good word. So why don't we say together, majestic. Majestic. Okay, so majestic temples to Taiwan's deities. Now this is a good word. I don't think we've ever learned this, but what is with a Y? This is plural, but singular, D-E-I-T-Y. What is a deity? A god, yeah, it's a god. It's any kind of god. Now, of course, if you walk to Taiwan and you go outside and you go to a temple, you'll see many deities, right? I always tell people in Taiwan, I think the number one deity is Matsu, right? Okay, very popular in Taiwan. But remember, it's a D-E-I-T-Y. That's a singular. And then, of course, this is plural. So why don't we say it with a Y? Deity. Deity. Deities. Deities. Right. So you might say, oh, people worship many different deities in Taiwan. Oh, okay. So yeah, it just means gods. Okay. And it says, and thriving factories. Now, of course, if something is thriving, what does that mean? What? Doing very well, growing, lively. Okay. Something is thriving. We can have a factory, we can have a city, we can have a person who is thriving. It usually means they're doing very well. They're very prosperous. They're growing. Okay. So why don't we say together, thriving. Thriving. And it comes from the 动词, to thrive. Thrive, to thrive, okay? We hope that, people will thrive in their environment. Children, as they grow up, we hope that they will thrive, right, as they grow up. Okay, so thriving factories dot the eastern Chinese city of Kunshan. Okay, now dot, you know what a dot is, right? This is like a dot, right? So when we say dot, what does that mean? It means they're spread all over the place. There's one there, there's one there, there's one there. They're all over. It's like dots. There's many different dots. So it means that we could say cover or spread across. Maybe that's a better word, to spread across the eastern city of Kunshan. For years, okay, or we could say for many years, a hub for Taiwanese businesses. Now, what's a hub? We've talked about that before. A center, like a zhongxing, a hub, okay? Okay, so a hub for Taiwanese businesses, but now the firms, okay, the companies, firm is another word for company, 公司, are feeling the strain. Now, we talked about feeling the heat. We could also say feeling the strain, okay? Now, when you feel strain, it's like stress, S-T-R-E-S-S, strain, stress, right? They're feeling the strain or the stress from cross-strait tensions, okay? 两岸, tension. We have the tension or, you know what tension means, right? Okay. Tension, pressure. That's a good word, pressure. Okay. That has stoked safety fears. Now, this word stoke is, I don't know if we've ever learned this, but what does to stoke mean? Yes, very good. Fuel. F-U-E-L. We talked about the word to fuel the fire, to fuel someone's interest. Stoke is the same idea. I'll tell you what this word comes from. It comes from a fire. Now, when we stoke a fire, what do? We add more wood, right? Or fuel to the fire, right? So, sometimes say, oh, the fire is getting low. You should stoke the fire. It means you should add more wood or paper or whatever you're burning to the fire to stoke it. Okay? So here it says, have stoked safety fears. It means it has fueled or caused or created safety fears over safety. Okay, does everybody understand that? Mm-hmm. Fireplace. No, it's no. There's a special word for it. It's called a fire. I know what you're talking about. There's a special word for that. It's a metal thing. It's like it looks like a stick, and you use it to. No, but you can also use it to poke the fire to get it burning more. I'll think of it later. But there's a special word for that. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so let's read this together. Bustling Taipei shopping streets. Shopping streets. Majestic temples to Taiwan's deities. Deities. And thriving factories. Dot the eastern Chinese city of Kunshan. For years a hub for Taiwanese businesses. But now the firms are feeling the strain from cross-strait tensions that have stoked safety fears. Stoked safety fears. Right. I just thought of that word. It's simple. It's actually called a poker. Not puka pie, but it's it's a metal thing and you use it to poke the fire, right? So it's called a poker. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So it says here, entrepreneurs from Taiwan poured billions into China when ties began improving in the 1990s, playing an important role in the nation's rise to become the world's second largest economy. But their numbers have dwindled, with the number of Taiwanese working in China dropping from 409,000 in 2009 to 177,000 in 2022, according to estimates provided by the Straits Exchange Foundation. Okay, so it says here, entrepreneurs from Taiwan poured billions. Now, when we say poured billions, you pour water, right? So when you pour something, it means you really add a lot, right? You're adding a lot. So we could say poured billions. Of course, we mean billions of dollars, right? Into China when ties, what's another word for ties? Relationship began to improving in the 1990s, okay? And then it says playing an important role in the nation, of course we're talking about China's, rise to become the world's second largest economy. But their numbers, this is numbers of Taiwanese, have dwindled. Now what's the word dwindle mean? Decrease, to fall, to drop. So I think the best word, you think of D for dwindle, we can talk about dropped or decreased. It's gone down, okay? So why don't we say together, dwindled. Dwindled. Now if we want to turn that into a 形容词, we can say dwindling, R-L-I-N-G, dwindling. Dwindling. Means falling, decreasing, okay. Yeah. No, that's swindle. With an S. So take out the D and add an S. So to swindle means to 骗人, right? S-W-I-N-D-L-E, to swindle. Or someone who does that is a swindler when you 骗人 or you cheat them, okay? A swindler, okay? Yeah, recently we say in Taiwan, scammer, like a scam, yeah. Okay, with the number of Taiwanese working in China dropping, okay, so this is really fallen significantly from 2009. Okay, so let's read this. Entrepreneurs, let's say it one more time. Entrepreneurs from Taiwan poured billions into China. When ties began improving in the 1990s, playing an important role in the nation's rise to become the world's second largest economy. Let's say it again, second largest economy. But their numbers have dwindled. Dwindled. With the number of Taiwanese working in China dropping from 409,000 let's say again, 409,000 in 2009 to 177,000 in 2022. According to estimates provided by the Straits Exchange Foundation. Okay, this is a 基金会, right? It's like, yeah, foundation is 基金会, right? Okay. Okay, So it says here, China's economic slowdown and mounting trade tensions with Washington are partially responsible, the foundation said. Now, what is mounting trade tensions? What is mounting? What's another word for that? Rising, growing, increasing. Okay, we say something is mounting, it means it's growing. Think of the word mountain, right? Mountain is very high, so mounting means it's growing, it's rising, okay? So why don't we say together, mounting. Mounting. Okay, so mounting trade tensions. Now, mount also means to climb on top of, right? If you ride a horse, this is the word we use most commonly. To mount a horse means to get on top of the horse, right? Yeah. Some people don't know how to mount. I've seen people, they try to mount the horse and they start with the wrong foot and they end up facing backwards, right? So, yeah, you have to know how to get on the horse. Okay. Have what kind of house? Yeah, I have, but I think I've ridden horses I've tried riding horses in Taiwan too. So yeah. So yeah, mounting trade tensions, okay, means growing trade tensions with Washington are partially. Now, you know the word partially means 一部分, right? In part, okay? In part. We could say in part. So partially. Why don't we say together? Partially. Partially. Okay, so let's read this. China's economic slowdown and mounting trade tensions. Oops. Okay. So, slowdown, I didn't mention the word slowdown. You know the word slowdown, right? It becomes a 名词, right? So we just take the word slow to slow down. So slow down, one word becomes a 名词, means to decrease, right? To a drop, right? It's economic slowdown, okay? I'm trying to think what the opposite of slowdown would be. It would be, but we don't use the word speed up as a 名词. Acceleration, growth, yeah, I don't know. Oh, I know. We could say, it's a similar kind of word. We could say one word, takeoff, okay? So their economic takeoff, oops, wrong screen. There we go. Yeah, so this becomes one word. To take off, we say a slow down or a takeoff, okay? So why don't we say together, slow down. Take off. Okay, so let's keep going. It says here, mounting trade tensions with Washington are partially responsible. One more time, partially responsible. The foundation said. Okay. You mean, what's another word for this? Yeah, accountable, or to blame. Yeah, I would say to blame. To blame, B-L-A-M-E, to blame, or partially to blame. I wouldn't say contributive. That would be kind of, we wouldn't say it that way too much. But yeah, I would say to blame might be a good way of saying it, to blame, or partially to blame. Does everybody know blame? You know, you've blamed somebody, you say it's your fault, right? I blame you for this. So we could say are partially to blame, the foundation said. That would probably be the most common way of saying it. Okay. So it says here, however, James Lee, a 78-year-old Taiwanese industrialist who was forced to close his cable and electrical factory in Guangdong province in 2022, blamed politics. Okay, let's read this too. You have to be very careful when you speak, Lee said. We Taiwanese businessmen are afraid. Okay, so James Lee, 78 years old. Does everybody know? Okay, this is, well, I think it's pretty simple. Industrialist basically means what? Well, it basically means a business person, right? but usually someone who's involved in manufacturing, like, 工厂. Because when you think of industry, industrial means like to make something. So if I was like, like a software engineer, or a restaurant owner, I would not be called an industrialist. Because industrialist has to be someone who's usually working in manufacturing, like factories, 工厂, something bigger, So anyhow, it's a big word. We don't use it too often. We usually just say business person or, yeah. So anyhow, hopefully you understand that. Let's say it together, industrialist. Industrialist. Okay, he was forced to close his cable and electrical factory. You know what a cable is, right? Well, there's many cables here, right? Cables are like 电线, right, or something like that. Yeah. So his cable and electrical factory in Guangdong blamed, okay, here's that word blame, right, to blame, okay, blamed politics. You have to be careful when you speak. Okay, so let's read this together. However, James Lee, a 78-year-old, let's say again, 78-year-old Taiwanese industrialist, who was forced to close his cable and electrical factory in Guangdong province in 2022, blamed politics. Of course, politics is 政治, right? Okay, you have to be very careful when you speak, Lee said. We Taiwanese businessmen are afraid. Okay. Now it says here, bolstered, now there's some good words here, bolstered by their mastery of Mandarin and business acumen, Taiwanese entrepreneurs have prospered as wily intermediaries between international markets and China's vast industrial manufacturing base. Okay, there's some great words here. Now, what is we talked about before, bolster means what? What? Supported by. Okay, so to bolster means supported by, yeah, I think supported would be the best word. I think it's support is a better word. It's like to lift up, to support, to bolster. I'll give you an example. After the 大地震, sometimes there's a building that looks like it might fall or it's damaged. They have to bolster the building. They have to support it so it doesn't fall over. Okay? So supported by. So why don't we say together, bolstered. Bolstered. Okay, so supported by what? Their mastery of Mandarin. Now, Mandarin is what? 中文, 华语, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so people call it Mandarin. Now, of course, this is very interesting because I often run into this. People say, I speak Mandarin, or I speak Chinese, or I speak Mandarin Chinese. Either one they're all okay, right? But let's say together, Mandarin. Mandarin. Okay, so this has a connection, of course, to, we say Beijinghua, right? It's a Mandarin, yeah. So Mandarin is a word connected to that. It says, so they're mastery. Now, if you have mastery of something, what does that mean? You're a master at it, right? You're good at it. So we talk about his mastery at painting, his mastery at cooking, his mastery at whatever. It means you're an expert. Okay. Mastery of Mandarin and business acumen. Now, this is a great word. What does acumen mean? A what? How do you spell that? S-H-R-E. Oh, shrewdness. We'll come to that. There's another word that's similar. Acumen, I think, is more like your ability, your skill. If you have acumen, it means you have great I shouldn't say ability or skill. I mean, I should say great ability or skill. So if you have acumen in something, it means you're very good at it. You have a skill in it. You have an ability in it. You have a, yeah. But it's a good, this word is often used with business. When we talk about business, we say acumen. And to be honest, we don't use this word a lot with other things. It's mostly with business. Yeah. That's a good question. I think you probably could, but I don't hear it used that way as much. I often hear about business acumen. It means you have this. Yeah, but that's more like 专家, right? Acumen just means you have a skill at it. You're good at it. You're good at it, okay? So why don't we say it together? Acumen. Acumen. Okay. Taiwanese entrepreneurs have prospered. I mean, they've done very well. Okay. As wily intermediaries. Now, let's start with this word. Does anyone know what an intermediary is? A middleman. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, broker, middleman. Wait, let's see, broker. Sometimes we say a go-between. Agent and what is it? Oh, that's a word, that's a very specialized word. I don't think we use it too much. But yeah, someone who's in the 中间, right? Someone in the middle. Now, some people say this is not a good word because it says man, right? So maybe there's a woman, right? But yeah, middleman is probably the most traditional word, but a broker, an agent, a go-between, it means someone who's in the middle, who helps the two sides talk to each other or do work business together. So we say an intermediary. Now, if you're negotiating with somebody, and you need to, I'll give you a word actually that's similar but a little bit different. If we're having a disagreement, a mediator, sorry, that's an IA, mediator. Okay. In Taiwan, I know that if you have a legal disagreement with somebody, you can go to an actually, that's another good word. Arbitration. OR? OR. So that's OR. Arbitrator. An arbitrator is somebody, how do you call it? There's a word for this in Chinese. Tiaojie, I think it's Tiaojie, yeah. 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 I've actually been through this before. We had a legal disagreement with somebody, and we went to the court, and there's somebody who sits in the room, and the two sides, they listen to both sides, and they try to help the two sides come to an agreement. But this is more, I would say these two words are more about legal disagreements. Intermediary is more general. It's like a middleman, like a go-between, okay? So remember, these two are more like for a negotiation or disagreement. These are more specialized, but these are more general, okay? Okay, so why don't we say together, intermediary. Intermediary. Now let's say these words, middleman, agent, broker, go-between. And then those words, mediator, mediator, arbitrator, arbitrator. Yeah. Right. 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 Okay. Yeah, so it's specialized words. But you just said a word earlier, a wily intermediary. Does everybody know the word wily? So he used a word that I think is very similar. Shrewd. That's an R. Shrewd. Someone who is wily or shrewd, it means they're very good, smart, but in a very clever way. I guess we could also say clever. Yeah. Okay. Smart, wily. Now, I will say this. sometimes when we use the word wily, it can be negative or positive. Like if you're wily, sometimes it means like you can 骗人 too, right? Right, you have lots of plots and plans. Yeah, cunning. Actually, that's another good word. Yeah, so it'd be close to the word cunning. Okay? So someone who's very wily or cunning, you could say this, it could be good, but sometimes it's not good. Like someone who's good at 骗 other people, right? Or fooling other people. But yeah, so wily, but I think here, of course, this is not to be negative. I don't think they're being negative. So I think this would be a better word, is shrewd or clever, okay? Okay, so you can say he's very shrewd with his money. Oops. Okay, so let's say those words, let's say these words together, okay? Clever. Clever. Shrewd. Shrewd. Cunning. Cunning. And then that last word, W-I-L-Y, wily. Wily. Now, I don't know if you grew up watching, there's a very famous American cartoon, with a bird that runs very quickly called the Roadrunner. Does anyone know about this? No, there's a bird, a Roadrunner. It's called a Roadrunner. And his enemy, his D-Ren, was called Wile E. Coyote. Does everybody remember this? Coyote is like a wolf, but it's smaller than a wolf. And the name of the wolf was Wile E. Coyote. Okay? And he was always trying to get back at the Roadrunner. Anyhow, you probably don't watch cartoons, yeah. Okay, so anyhow, we'll read this and then we'll be done. It says, wily intermediaries between international markets and China's vast, of course, is very big industrial manufacturing base. So the Taiwanese were very good at being intermediaries, middlemen, people in the middle. Okay? So there's a lot of good words here. Let's read this and then we'll be done. Bolstered by their mastery of Mandarin and business acumen. Taiwanese entrepreneurs have prospered as wily intermediaries. One more time. As wily intermediaries between international markets and China's vast industrial manufacturing base. Manufacturing base. Right. Because, when all these 外国公司 want to do business in China, the Taiwanese can help them do business over there, right? Because they're good at business and they're good at speaking 中文 and all that. So, okay, well, that's all we have time for today. But lots of new words, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.